Kellyanne, this is truly a terrible day, and the 10-ton gorilla in the room is the president, I'm afraid, and you are his senior counselor, and many, many people are asking whether now all these words that he's used, all these phrases that he's used, will he follow up on what he urged the country today to put aside racial hatred, white supremacy, and just stop all this hatred? Will he do that now?
Well, Christiane, he already did it, and you've given a platform on your network the last 24 to 36 hours to people who would like to be the president and are out there using some really hateful language to get kicks and clicks and ratings. But today we saw the president take to the podium and speak directly to the people of this country and indeed all around the world, condemning unequivocally in no uncertain terms white supremacy, bigotry, racism. I have to gently but firmly disagree with your characterization of the president and remind you that today he showed equal parts grief, shock, anger, condolences, resolve, and action.
So I just want to ask you again, the president used the word invasion, and the gunman said his attack was a response to the Hispanic invasion of Texas. Kellyanne, you're his senior counselor. You are really close to him. Do you countenance those words that the president uses? Do you try to tell him not to use words like invasion, like infestation, like all the words that he uses which are associated with hate speech?
Christiane, not so long ago, you had the former FBI director, Jim Comey, on your show, and controversially, you asked him, does he regret not having regulated, I guess, or prosecuted as hate speech, quote, lock her up. So what we saw this week, and I think he even pushed back on that, what we saw this week is real hate and real evil and real bigotry and real white supremacists and real murder. And that monster ought to be brought to justice through the death penalty, in my view. And I'm glad that those in Texas who are in charge of such things have called this domestic terrorism and indeed can pursue the death penalty. I'd like to know if the 2020 crowd, who's preening and screaming all over your network and elsewhere, is going to look America in the eye and somehow tell us that the death penalty should not be considered for this monster.
I understand. I'm honestly trying to have
death penalty.
I'm trying to have a grown-up conversation with you, and the death penalty is an issue down the road, which the president has already associated himself with. We've already had the Attorney General, the Justice Department talking about reinstating the federal death penalty. That's done. Let's move on.
For cases like monsters like the
for monsters,
evil person
right?
Like the evil person in El Paso. That the president's right when he talks about the drugs coming over the southern border.
Okay.
The drugs are killing our communities. Well, you played the clip. Let me respond to it. I work on that here in the White House, and we have the first drop in overdose deaths at 5.1% last year because of the efforts, the whole of government approach, bipartisan efforts we're making. The drugs coming over the border, that we had enough fentanyl interdicted at the ports of entry to kill every man, woman, and child in this country 3 times plus over. And between the ports of entry, another batch of fentanyl, all told, last fiscal year to kill 90 million people. I know you don't want to talk about it.
No, it's not that I don't want to talk about it.
Security.
This is entirely your issue, and I understand. And we have had a whole interview on this. Kellyanne, we're not talking about border security right now. We're talking about U.S. domestic terrorism.
It's like Kellyanne Conway is literally incapable of not desperately pivoting in every direction possible. In a specific conversation about 2 specific shootings that occurred over the weekend, she managed to pivot to the death penalty, to drugs coming into the southern border. If CNN's Amanpour hadn't stopped her, Kellyanne would be attacking Democrat Jimmy Carter and his role in the Iran hostage crisis by now. But the fact that she needs to so obviously bring up other subjects is a testament to just how indefensible the White House's position is on this one. And look, of course she doesn't want to answer these questions. Her boss is directly responsible for the dramatic uptick in these kinds of attacks. But with that said, that is absolutely no excuse for her then to invoke the southern border. During an interview when she's trying and failing to defend the president for his attacks on migrants coming into the southern border, after a shooting where the shooter targeted Hispanics coming in through the southern border. It is so glaringly tone-deaf and dangerous that, frankly, I wouldn't be surprised if Trump himself was feeding her lines through an earpiece. If Kellyanne is so unwilling to simply answer the question in front of her that she'd rather bounce around from this subject to that like a cat in a bathtub, then don't work for this administration. If it is that difficult to defend, spare yourself the indignity. Or at least spare it for George Conway. Kellyanne goes on to repeatedly try and absolve Trump of any and all wrongdoing by pointing to the fact that he's condemned bigotry and hatred, that he's spoken out against the shooter, that he's denounced the words in his manifesto, that he was oh so presidential and squinted at the teleprompter on national TV. But this is all reactive. It's real nice that Trump has managed to denounce all this stuff after the fact, but what about the causes? What about the racist rhetoric espoused in the shooter's manifesto that led to the attack? The same rhetoric that Trump himself spews on a daily basis. Guess it was just pure coincidence that the El Paso shooter claimed to have wanted to kill as many Hispanics as possible, while we've heard Trump for days and weeks and months and years leveraging an ongoing assault against Mexicans and immigrants, invoking words like infestation and invasion and rapists and criminals and drug dealers. Guess it was just a coincidence that a white nationalist drove 10 hours to El Paso, Texas, a safe Hispanic majority city whose very existence undermines Trump's talking points, fear-mongering about the dangers of immigrants. At some point, Republicans will stop pretending that the thing that looks like a duck and quacks like a duck isn't a duck. Kellyanne even points out that Trump showed equal parts grief, shock, anger, resolve, and action. Imagine saying this and expecting the President of the United States to get credit for that, for doing the bare minimum, for doing what literally every American is doing. Give me a break. For showing grief after dozens of Americans were killed in a mass shooting? It's like we're praising one of those Boston Dynamics robots for doing human stuff. That she even needs to say any of this in defense of the leader of the country is a really sad sign of the times. Imagine Eric Holder appearing on Fox News during the Obama era and saying, well, hold on now, Sean Hannity. In his defense, President Obama was sad after the latest mass shooting. Conservatives would say Obama's as anti-American as Osama bin Laden and then start a GoFundMe to pay for his trip to The Hague. So while Kellyanne's whataboutism might have worked in the past, her tactics have become as tired as they are ineffective. And if I was a Trump supporter, I'd be embarrassed that the woman representing this administration treats me like that much of an idiot. Because anyone that tries to twist this shooting into a referendum on the death penalty or the southern border or any tertiary GOP talking point definitely doesn't think the people she's speaking to are in any way intelligent.